Today we will begin scene 13. So in the last scene we saw the courtship between Jane and Hammond and how Hammond was persuasive and Jane was compelled to give him some word, and she finally said that if she is to marry in the future, then she would marry him. But she was very hesitant because she had no proper information regarding her husband. And Hammond showed her some list of people who died in France, in which there was Ralph's name. But whether that list was authentic or not, about that there was no certainty. In the next scene, scene 13 is a jovial scene. We see the shoemakers working in their shop, and we remember that Simon has given his shop or the responsibility of the shop to Hodge. So now Hodge is the boss and the others, they are working under him. And the scene begins with two lines from a song, Hey Down, a Down, Down Derry, which are approximately lines 9 to 10 from the Three Men's song. So at the beginning of the play, you see some songs are appended, and the directors would make the characters sing these songs where they think fit. So we have the first three-man song and the second three-man song, and lines 9 to 10 are these lines. So these songs sung by the shoemakers suggest their working class people. They would often work and sing simultaneously. Sometimes they would sing to keep the rhythm of their work, or sometimes they would just sing to amuse themselves and to be in a good spirit. Hodgewell said, "My hearts ply your work day, we loitered yesterday." So you see here the reflection of the work ethic. Dekker makes it a point to present the ethics of these people regarding work. The middle class people, they considered work very important, particularly because of Puritan influence. The middle class people would consider industry a virtue. Industry means doing hard labor, hard work. Unlike the nobility, they consider work to be very important, and since the previous day they didn't work and Simon had declared a holiday, so today Roger or Hodge says that they must work to compensate for the loss of the previous day. To it pell-mell that we may live to be Lord Mayors or aldermen at least. Pell-mell means straight away. So go to work straight away, so that by virtue of our industry we can also one day become either a mayor like Simon, or at least an alderman, an important representative in the city council. Hodge, well said in faith, how sayest thou, Hans, does not Fark tickle it? So Fark was singing the song, and therefore Hodge says that Fark is living it up, that is making the atmosphere cheerful. Yo, mister, so Lacey says in the Dutch accent. Not so neither, my organ pipe squeaks this morning for want of liquoring. Organ pipe, you know that the organs, an organ is the most important musical instrument in a church. An organ has a number of pipes of various lengths, and as wind passes through these pipes, they make sounds of various notes depending upon the length of the pipe. So here Fark is referring to his windpipe and says that it is squeaking. That is, it is not emitting the proper sound because it lacks liquoring, which means that it must be made moist with drinking. And then Lacey, forward for to best and jolly youngster, hot I Mr. Ich bid you cut me and pair vamp for Mr. Jeffrey's boots. The modern English translation would be, indeed Firk, you are a jolly youngster. Listen master, I bid you cut me a pair of vamps for Master Jeffrey's boots. Vamp is the front part of a shoe. So he wants Firk to cut him a pair of vamps. So shoemaking is a collaborative work, and different workers make different parts of the shoe and then assemble it. Of course, an individual can also make a whole shoe, but more often it is a collaborative work. Thou shalt, Hans. Master, how now, boy? Pray now, you are in the cutting vein, cut me out a pair of counterfeits, or else my work will not pass current. You notice that Firk calls Hodge as master, because now Hodge is the master of the shoe factory. And he asks him to cut a pair of similar vamps. And Hodge says, tell me, sirs, are my cousin Mr. Priscilla's shoes done? I am in hand with them. She gave charge that none but I should do them for her. So Ralph is in charge of Priscilla's shoes. Thou do for her, then it will be a lame doing. So Firk is joking because Ralph has now become lame. So he says that if you work, then it will be a lame work, and that she loves not. Ralph, thou mightest have sent her to me. In faith, I would have yerked and fucked your Priscilla. So of course in Ralph's words, in Firk's words, there are these obscene innuendos. So you do not do it for her, I can do it for her better. And yerks and fucks, these are innuendos of the sexual act. Hey down a dairy, this gear will not hold. Means that this won't last. So you must work better. And this gear refers to probably his instrument. How sayest thou, Firk, were you not merry at Old Ford? They are talking about their party at Old Ford, Otley's place. How merry? Why, our buttocks went jiggy-joggy like a quagmire, which means that they enjoyed their celebration at Old Ford. Jiggy-joggy, going jiggy-joggy, referring to dancing movements. Well, Sir Roger Oatmeal, if I thought all meal of that nature, I would eat nothing but bag puddings. So bag puddings, that is meal of meat and oatmeal. So Firk is punning on Roger Oatley's name and says that the meal he provided, that is like oatmeal. Of all good fortunes, my fellow Hans had the best. Ralph says that Hans had the greatest opportunity or the best experience because Mistress Rose herself approached him and offered him drink. It is true because Mistress Rose drank to him. Well, well, work apace. They say 7 of the aldermen be dead or very sick. So you see, even in the midst of this very jolly scene, there is a reference to death. Death, sickness, particularly in the context of the plague in London. The information about death had become very normal. We are going through something similar today. Every day we hear about people dying because of this virus. Similarly, during the plague in England, to which they did not have any cure, people would die very frequently. And 7 aldermen were dead or very sick, and they are quite nonchalant about it. I care not, I will be none. I will be none means I will not be an alderman, so I don't have to worry about being dead. No, nor I, but then my master Eyre will come quickly to be Lord Mayor. Well, Ralph says that neither will I become an alderman, but then our master Simon Eyre, he is going to be the Lord Mayor. So if the aldermen are sick with plague, then it should be a cause for worry. And then Sybil enters, And we have already seen that Dekker portrays Sybil as a jolly wench, a happy-go-lucky young girl. Whoop, yonder comes Sybil. Sybil, welcome, in faith, and how does thou, mad wench? So this is an affectionate way of speaking. They welcome her. Syb whore, welcome to London. So calling her whore is not something actually derogatory, rather here it is said affectionately. So this is how the working class people, they would often use slang or use profane words just to enjoy themselves, which do not have any purpose of insulting. God a mercy, sweet fur, good Lord Hodge, what a delicious shop you have got. You tickle it in faith. So once again we have the use of the word tickle to mean that you live it up. You enjoy yourselves very well in this shop, as we can see. Nay, by the mass, we had tickling cheers, Sybil. Ralph says, God a mercy, Sybil. Now you see this expression, God a mercy, working class expression. It actually should mean thank God. And I think it is appropriated from the French word merci, which means thank, for our good cheer at Old Fort. Ralph thanks Sybil because Sybil entertained them, offered them hospitality at Old Fort. That shall you have, Ralph. Nay, by the mass we had tickling cheers, Sybil, and how the plague does thou and Mistress Rose and my Lord Mayor? Park says he is taking this oath by the mass. So for the Roman Catholics, mass was an important religious institution, but we see that working class people did not bother, so they would even swear by referring to this religious event. So we had tickling cheer, we enjoyed ourselves a lot. And how do Mistress Rose and my Lord Mayor, how do they do? I put the women in first, because he has to explain this, because usually everything is done following a hierarchy. So even in speech, while referring to people, one should refer to the more respectable people first. Simon Eyre is the Lord Mayor, but Fark says that I put women first. Now that was also a custom of chivalry, to name the women first. Well, God a mercy, but God is me. I forget myself. God's me means God save me. I forget myself. Where is Hans the Fleming? Actually, Sybil's purpose in coming here is to fix an appointment with Lacey for Rose. So Rose sent her to have an appointment with Lacey. Fark says, hark, Butterbox, now you must yelp out some sprechen. Butterbox is an allusion to a Dutchman. So he says, now you must speak something. Sprechen means to speak. What begay you? What you, Frister? Means what do you want? What would you, girl? Mary, you must come to my young mistress to pull on her shoes you made last. Sybil asks him to come to Old Fort to help her with the pair of shoes. So that is an excuse. Basically, we have seen that earlier Rose appointed Sybil to find out a way so that she can meet Hans or Lacey. Where ben your Edelfrau? Where ben your mistress? Where is your noble lady? Where is your mistress? Marry here at our London house in Cornwall. Will nobody serve her turn but Hans? So Fark says, why Hans? Anybody can go and help her with the shoes. No sir, come Hans, I stand upon needles. Standing upon needles is a proverb which means that I am impatient. Why then, Sybil, take it of pricking? So standing upon needle means you may be pricked, but pricking also had an obscene sexual innuendo suggestion. For that, let me alone. I have a trick in my budget. So here Sybil is outdoing the men in the game of sexual innuendos. A trick in my budget or a gadget in my purse means she is referring to her body parts concealed in a dress which might take care of her. That is, she need not be afraid of pricking. And then they leave, Lacey and Sybil. Go Hans, make haste again, come who lacks work. So Roger takes care that work is not hampered. I master, for I lack my breakfast. It is munching time and fast. So Puck says, let us stop, this must be our break for a breakfast. Is it so? Why then leave work, Ralph, to breakfast, boy. Look to the tools. So Hodge immediately allows them to go for breakfast. So we see that they are quite, Roger is also quite permissive, and he knows that the working men, they work very hard, so he does not mind giving them the break. In the next scene we see a serving man. A serving man means a servant. A servant is sent to Ralph with the order of asking him to make a pair of shoes for Jane. And from this, the old pair of shoes that he brings, Ralph would immediately recognize them because it is the same pair of shoes that he gifted his wife before his departure. So here we see how Ralph finds it out, and then he begins suspecting that there is a plot of Jane getting married. Let me see now the sign of the last in Tower Street. Yonder is the house. So he comes to the sign of the tower, the sign of the last on Tower Street, and looks for Simon Eyer's shop. And Ralph comes out. Who calls there? What want you, sir? Mary, I would have a pair of shoes made for a gentlewoman against tomorrow morning. What can you do then? So I want the pair of shoes to be done and delivered by tomorrow morning. Why, you must make them all parts like this shoe. Ralph says, yes sir, you shall have them, but what is the length of her foot? Yes, you shall have them, but you must make them in all parts like this shoe, but at any hand fail not to do them. For the gentlewoman is to be married very early in the morning. So he hands him over the old pair of shoes and tells him that this is the measurement, this is the model which you must follow, and you must make a similar pair of shoes, but you must deliver tomorrow morning because the woman will be married early in the morning. How? By this shoe must it be made? By this? Are you sure, sir? So Ralph keeps repeating the phrase by this a number of times. So even though it appears comic, but it indicates that Ralph is not only surprised having to see this pair of shoes, but he is planning something in his mind. So he keeps repeating by this, and this serving man gets irritated. How? By this? Am I sure? By this? Art thou in thy wits? So are you mad or what? Why are you repeating by this? I tell thee I must have a pair of shoes. Dost thou mark me? A pair of shoes, 2 shoes, made by this very shoe, this same shoe, against tomorrow morning by 4 o'clock. Dost understand me? Yes, sir, yes, I can do it. By this shoe, you say? Again he repeats. Yes, sir, by this shoe. I can't do it. I can do it. 4 o'clock. Well, whither shall I bring them? So this repetition of the phrase by this will have a comic effect. Everybody will laugh hearing Ralph going on and on saying by this. To the sign of the Golden Ball in Watling Street, inquire for one Master Hammond, a gentleman, my master. So the servant gives him the address where the new pair of shoes must be delivered. Yes, sir, by this shoe you say. I say Master Hammond at the Golden Ball. So the servant is irritated and he says that I didn't say by this. I said you delivered them to Master Hammond He is the bridegroom and those shoes are for his bride. So the servant makes it very clear that Haman is going to marry Jane. Though he does not tell the name of Jane, probably he doesn't know the name of the bride. They shall be done by this shoe. Well, Master Haman at the golden shoe. I would say the golden ball. He gets confused and says golden ball instead of golden shoe, or he does it deliberately. He misrepresents the expression. Very well, but I pray you, sir, where must Master Haman be married? At St. Faith's Church under Paul's. But what is that to thee? Cunningly, Ralph extracts from the servant the name of the church where Haman and Jane are going to be married. And the servant gives him the information because the servant does not have any idea why Ralph is getting all this information. So he tells him the name of the church and is surprised and says, "Why do you ask it?" "By this shoe," said he. "How am I amazed at this strange accident. Upon my life, this was the very shoe I gave my wife when I was pressed for France, since when, alas, I never could hear of her. It is the same, and Haman's bride no other but my Jane." So Ralph recognizes. So the pair of shoes, the old pair of shoes, acts like a token of recognition. You remember Ovigyana Shakuntalam in Kalidas?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So Ovigyana means token of remembrance. So here the old pair of shoes is it represents the token by which Ralph recognizes that these shoes belong to Jane and that she is going to be married to Haman. Fark. "Snails, Ralph, thou hast lost thy part of three pots a countryman of mine gave me to breakfast." So since Ralph was busy with this servant, he missed some drink. So Fark says, snails means god snails, another oath, that you lost 3 pots of drink. "I care not, I have found a better thing." "A thing? Away! Is it a man's thing or a woman's thing?" So now, of course, Fark always, his jokes are always obscene jokes. So man's thing or woman's thing, they refer to the sexual organs. But what is important is that the repeated use of the word thing. And we know that in this play, so I was saying that material objects, they take upon themselves a life of their own or kind of a significance of their own in this play. And that is why the thing or the word thing is important, because it stands for the significance of objects. Why objects are significant? Because through description or depiction of multiple objects of consumption, Dekker is presenting a picture of the age, the quality of the age, which was deeply indulged in consumption of luxury materials. So it was a period of accumulation and acquisition of objects, of things, of consumption. "Fark, dost thou know this shoe?" "No, by my truth, neither doth that know me. I have no acquaintance with it. It is a mere stranger to me." So you see, this is just a joke, that I do not know the shoe does not know me either. But this kind of suggestion of the shoes being alive, as if they are alive things, so they do not know me, it enforces this idea of the importance of the objects. "Why then I do, this shoe I dust be sworn, once covered the instep of my Jane. This is her size, her breadth, thus trod my love. These 2 love knots I pricked. I hold my life. By this old shoe I shall find out my wife." Size of the shoe, the breadth of the shoe, and the shape of it, and the knots, decorative knots on the shoe which Ralph had, all these become very important for him, because this pair of shoe offers him a lifeline, because it is a connection, it would help in reconnecting him with his wife, or it will again join him with his wife. So the love knots, these true love knots I pricked. So pricking is an action in shoemaking, but pricking in slang means the sexual act, and therefore this ambiguity here suggests Ralph's desire to be united with his wife. Ha ha, old shoe, that wert new, how a murrain came this egg fit of foolishness upon thee. Fark does not realize the importance of Ralph's words, and jokes that this murrain, that is this plague, it has made you foolish. So because of this situation of plague, that you were thinking in a stupid manner. Thus Fark, even now here came a serving man. So since Fark does not understand, so Ralph once again explains it to him, and that a serving man came here. By this shoe would he have a new pair made against tomorrow morning for his mistress, that is to be married to a gentleman. And why may not this be my sweet Jane? It is quite likely that the girl who is going to marry this gentleman, she is Jane, because since these shoes belong to her and a similar pair of shoes have been ordered, so this girl can be nobody else than my wife Jane. And why mayst not thou be my sweet ass? So Fark is still joking. Well, laugh and spare not, but the truth is this: against tomorrow morning I will provide a last crew of honest shoemakers to watch the going of the bride to church. So here you see Ralph says that I will take along with me a great number of shoemakers to the church where they are going to get married. So in this we see the bonding among the shoemakers, people belonging to a same trade. So Ralph can rely upon his friends that they will help him, they will go with him, and they will sort the matter out. If she prove Jane, I will take her in despite from Haman and the devil where he by. If it be not my Jane, what remedy? So we will go together, and if we see that she is Jane, then I will take her, even if it is Haman or a devil. I don't care. I will fight him and I will take her. But if it is not Jane and somebody else, then there is no remedy. Hereof am I sure, I shall live till I die, although I never with a woman lie. So if I do not find Jane, then I will never lie with a woman till I die. So Ralph indicates his loyalty towards Jane and says that I will never marry another woman if I am unable to again get Jane back. So this is a representation of middle class virtue of chastity, that is only the idea of sticking to only one sexual partner. Thou lie with a woman to build nothing but cripple gates. Fark coins the word cripple gate, similar to Ludgate, and says that if you marry, then you will build nothing but cripple gate, because you are lame. Well, God sends fool's fortune, and it may be he may light upon his matrimony by such a device, for wedding and hanging goes by destiny. So this is a common joke we find in Elizabethan plays, that hanging, this is something we also find in Shakespeare. An event of great enjoyment like a wedding is often compared to or is thought to be similar to hanging. In other words, hanging was so common in the Elizabethan period, and public executions were source of public entertainment because people were executed in public and they would throng to see it. So like a wedding, it was also a source of entertainment. Okay, so this brief scene, it indicates the movement of the plot of Ralph and Jane, the reunion between Ralph and Jane, going ahead. So this progress of the plot, and we may imagine that this plot will come to maturity when they will be able to get united once again. So as I told you that more or less these three plots, you can see the main plot is the romantic affair between Lacey and Rose, and the parallel plot is the separation and reunion between Ralph and Jane. And besides these two, which are romantic plots, there is the plot of getting rich quick of Simon Eyre. From an honest shoemaker, he becomes the mayor of London. In the next scene, we see Lacey and Rose meeting again, and there is an announcement of the arrival of Rose's father, Otley. So since there are multiple scenes and there is no act division, so we also see the dramatic technique of Dekker, that he does not stick to only one plot, but he is able to make the three plots progress simultaneously. So one scene which has one plot in it will be alternated with another scene which will have a different plot in it. Lacey and Rose are now, which means that they are very happy being united. How happy am I by embracing thee? Oh, I did fear such cross mishaps did reign, that I should never see my Rose again. He is very happy to embrace Rose, and he says that I was afraid that such cross, which means such adversity, may be there, that I won't be able to meet you. Sweet Lacey, since fair opportunity offers herself to further our escape, let not too overfond esteem of me hinder that happy hour. So he says that since we have been able to unite, able to meet, then we must plot our escape. And you must not waste time by being too careful. Rather, you must quickly invent some means. Invent the means and Rose will follow thee through all the world. So whatever plot you will devise, I will follow your dictates, and so that we can escape from this place. Lacey, oh how surfeit with excess of joy, how I surfeit with excess of joy, made happy by thy rich perfection. But since thou payest sweet interest to my hopes, redoubling love on love, let me once more, like to a bold-faced debtor, crave of thee this night to steal abroad, and at Eyre's house, who now by death of certain aldermen is mayor of London, and my master once, meet thou thy Lacey, where in spite of chance, your father's anger and mine uncle's hate, our happy nuptials will consummate. So Lacey says he is using a metaphor of economics, we may say, an economic metaphor. Economics also means household finance. The word is actually derived from Greek oikonomics. Oiko means household. So in economics of debt, there would be more interest the more one borrows, interest will be piled one upon another. Lacy says that you pile interest upon interest, redoubling love on love. My debt to you is repaid by the interest. So what I offered you, you redouble it with your interest, which means that whatever I love you, you love me more by adding interest, redoubling love on love. And therefore it is a fruitful economy where interest piles up. And therefore, like a bold debtor borrows more and more. So I will borrow some more time from you. So just wait till tonight. I will go this night to the place of Simon Iyer, and Simon Iyer, who has become now the mayor by virtue of the death of an alderman. So you see, we can connect all these stray facts together. In the last scene, we saw that there is a reference to 7 aldermen dying or being very sick. And here, Lacy confirms that the death of an alderman gives Simon the opportunity of becoming the mayor. So we will go there, and there, whether there is my father, there is my Uncle Lincoln, or there is your father Otley, we will celebrate our happy nuptials, and in spite of the possible anger of your father and my uncle's hate, we will consummate our nuptials. In other words, Lacy tells her that you wait till tonight, we will hatch a plan to get out of this place and consummate our marriage at some place, even though my uncle and your father may be extremely angry. Then Sybil comes and announces that Otley is coming, and therefore they must do something, because if Lacy is recognized, then that will be dangerous. Oh God, what will you do, mistress? Shift for yourself. Your father is at hand. He is coming, he is coming. Master Lacy, hide yourself. In, my mistress, for God's sake, shift for yourselves. Shift means change. So you change your dress, or you somehow change yourself so that you are not recognized and caught. Lacy, your father comes, sweet Rose, what shall I do? Where shall I hide me? How shall I escape? So we see that Rose has the presence of mind. A man and want wit in extremity. Come, come, be Hans still, play the shoemaker, pull on my shoe. So Rose says that you are a man, yet you do not have the presence of mind, and you are afraid in the case of extremity or emergency. The best thing would be to play the shoemaker. So you pull my shoe and help me with the shoe, and nobody will recognize you as Lacy. Otley comes, mass, and that is well remembered. Here comes your father. Forward, mistress, 'tis in good scope, it shall well duty, or you shall knit battalion. Indeed, mistress, it is a good shoe, it shall do well, or you will not pay for it. So Lacy speaks in the manner of Dutch man, and pretending to be Hans. Rose, oh God, it pinches me, what will you do? It pinches me, there is the shoe pinches me. Aside, your father's presence pinches, not the shoe. So Lacy jokes that it is your father's presence which creates the problem here, not the shoe. Well done, fit my daughter well, and she shall please thee well. Which means Otley does not recognize Lacy, and tells him that you fit the shoe to my daughter's feet well and she will reward you. Yo, if white that well, for where 'tis in good school, 'tis gay mate, one needs neither, say ever mine ear. Yes, I know that well. Indeed, it is a good shoe. It is made of neat's leather. Just look, my lord. So it is very soft leather and it will fit very well. The Earl of Lincoln come to speak with me. Well, I know his errand. Daughter Rose, send hence your shoemaker, dispatch have done. See, make things handsome. So in the meantime, a man comes, apprentice, is a junior apprentice. What is the news with you? Please you, the Earl of Lincoln at the gate is newly lighted and would speak with you. So the apprentice announces the arrival of Lincoln. Hotly, the Earl of Lincoln come to speak with me. Well, I know his errand. Daughter Rose, send hence your shoemaker. So he tells his daughter to let the shoemaker go because Lincoln has come. He must have some important occasion. Dispatch have done. See, make things handsome. So prepare everything for the arrival of Lincoln. Mine uncle come. Oh, what may this portend? Sweet Rose, this of our love threatens an end. So Lacy is afraid again that Lincoln has come and he must recognize Lacy, and therefore he says that what may it portend? What could be the probable consequences of this? Is it going to bring an end to our love? Be not dismayed at this, whatever befall, Rose is thine own. To witness I speak truth, when thou appoints the place, I will meet with thee. I will not fix a day to follow thee, but presently steal hence. Do not reply. Love which gave strength to bear my father's hate shall now add wings to further our escape. So as we saw earlier, Rose always has the presence of mind, and she says that you do not be dismayed, do not be affected by this. Whatever happens, Rose is your own. So I will always remain loyal to you, and the place that you will appoint for our meeting, I will go there and meet you. And I will not make an elaborate plan. I will not fix a day to follow you, but immediately I will leave this place. Presently steal hence. The love which gave strength to bear my father's hate. That is, I could tolerate my father's hatred because you love me, shall now add wings to further our escape. It is the same force of love which will add wings to our escape, which means that love will empower us to find a way to escape from these dangers. So even though it is a comedy, we see that the romantic relationship between Lacy and Rose is always fraught with danger and high risk, because their guardians, none of them approve this relationship. So even though they belong to different classes, yet they are conscious of their difference so much that they won't allow marriage which would be an inter-class marriage. Therefore, Rose and Lacy, Lacy had to take recourse to the trick of taking a disguise of a Dutch shoemaker, and Rose must also find very limited means or limited opportunities of meeting her lover. So there is a kind of hide and seek going on, and this makes the play interesting. How this problem will be resolved. The crisis in a romantic comedy is when the lovers cannot meet. And in comedies, there will always be a way by which they would be ultimately able to meet. But in tragedy, love often would be unsuccessful and may end tragically. So we may say that Dekker is very adept in his plot making and does not make things easy for Rose and Lacey, and a lot of color is added to the play by introducing the shoemakers. So even though neither Rose nor Lacey, that is none of the protagonists, actually belong to the shoemaking class, because the shoemakers, even though they are middle class, they are slightly lower than the class of, say, the grocers, Otley and so on. So here we see that Simon rises in rank, and then the marriage of his daughter to here we see that the shoemakers, among them Simon rises in rank, and therefore the comedy which entails protagonists from different classes, this class difference is somewhat moderated by the rise of Simon Eyre, who is a shoemaker. So there lies the significance of the third plot, the plot of the rise of Simon Eyre, becoming the mayor. By becoming the mayor, he becomes equivalent to Otley. On the other hand, we see the fall of Roland Lacey, because from an aristocrat he becomes a shoemaker, even though it is a disguise. So Dekker represents the mobility of the classes. That is, a person could either rise or fall in his class status in this period.